As I stepped into the grand auditorium, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. The scent of polished wood mingled with the faint aroma of fresh flowers, which adorned every corner in celebration of the day. Graduates in their caps and gowns filled the seats, their faces a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. My heart swelled with pride as I caught sight of my son, David, seated among the other graduates, his face lit up with a radiant smile. "Look at him, David," I murmured to myself, fighting back tears. "You did it. You really did it." The ceremony commenced, and the air buzzed with chatter. As the keynote speaker began her address, I stole glances at David, who had always been a diligent student, but this year had outshone even my highest expectations. He had maintained a flawless record in genetic engineering, no grades below an A. How did my little boy, who once struggled with simple math problems, evolve into this remarkable young man? "Mom, did you see how they called my name?" David whispered excitedly to me when he spotted me in the crowd, his voice barely containing his enthusiasm. "I did." "And the crowd cheered like you were a rock star," I replied, grinning from ear to ear. "You deserve every bit of it. I'm so proud of you." As the ceremony progressed, I found myself lost in thought, reflecting on the challenges David had faced and the sacrifices our family had made for his education. He had always been passionate about science, but it wasn't just about grades. It was about his dreams and the future that lay ahead. After several speeches and the awarding of diplomas, it was finally time for David to take the stage. As he walked forward, a hush fell over the auditorium. I could see the pride radiating from his posture, his chin held high. As he accepted his diploma, the applause erupted, and I felt a thrill of joy shoot through me. "Look at him. That's my boy," I exclaimed, elbowing the woman next to me, who smiled back, clearly enjoying the moment as well. After the ceremony, families flooded the stage to congratulate their graduates. I maneuvered through the crowd, my heart racing with excitement. Finally, I reached David, enveloping him in a warm hug. "You are amazing. I can't believe how well you did," I exclaimed, pulling back to look at his face, still flushed with joy. "Thanks, Mom. I really wanted to make you proud," he replied, his eyes sparkling. "You did more than that." I'm bursting with pride. I grinned, brushing a stray hair from his forehead. "So what's next? Have you thought about what you want to do with all these opportunities coming your way?" David shrugged, a hint of uncertainty creeping into his expression. "I've been getting calls from a few companies. There's a lot of interest. It's exciting, but I don't know if I'm ready for it all." I felt a surge of protective instinct. "You've worked so hard for this, David. You are ready. Just remember to follow your passion. That's what matters most." "Yeah, I guess," he said, his voice trailing off as he scanned the crowd. "But it's so overwhelming. I wish I understood it all better." "You will, sweetie. It's okay not to have all the answers right now. You've got time to figure it out." As the day unfolded, I couldn't shake the bittersweet feeling that clung to me. Yes, I was proud, but there was an underlying sadness, a hint of what lay beneath the surface of our family life. The cheers and celebrations felt surreal, almost like a cover for the cracks I knew were widening in my marriage to Alan. "Hey, look at that." David pointed towards a group of graduates huddled together, laughing and taking pictures. "They're planning to celebrate tonight. Should we join them?" I hesitated for a moment, weighing my son's enthusiasm against the reality of my fractured home life. "Maybe a little later. I think we should spend some time together first, just us. You know, celebrate this moment before you dive into the next big thing." David smiled and nodded. "You're right. I'd like that." As we walked out of the auditorium, arm in arm, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Despite everything, I still had David. We still had each other, and perhaps, just perhaps, we could navigate the changes ahead together. The celebration dinner after graduation was a whirlwind of laughter, congratulations, and a touch of nervous energy. The restaurant buzzed with graduates and their families, all basking in the joy of achievement. I watched David as he animatedly shared stories with his friends about their academic journey, his eyes sparkling with excitement. It was contagious, and I couldn't help but smile at his enthusiasm. "Mom, can you believe it?" David exclaimed, leaning closer to me at the table. "I've got interviews lined up with 3 different companies next week." "I can believe it. You've earned every opportunity coming your way," I replied, my heart swelling with pride. "But remember, don't rush into anything. Take your time to find what really feels right for you." He nodded, a thoughtful look crossing his face. "I know, but it's hard not to get swept up in the excitement. All these companies are interested in me, like I'm some kind of hot commodity." "That's because you are. Just remember that it's not just about the job offers. It's about finding a place where you can grow and do what you love," I advised, sipping my water and trying to ignore the flutter of anxiety in my stomach. As the evening wore on, David's friends began discussing their future plans, and I couldn't help but listen in, a mix of admiration and concern flooding through me. I heard one company in Switzerland is offering some incredible opportunities in genetic research. One of David's friends said, his voice brimming with excitement. "Yeah, and they said they want to invest in our research projects," another chimed in. "It could be a game changer for all of us." David leaned in, his eyes alight with ambition. "Imagine working in a place like that. It's like a dream come true." "Just be careful, okay?" I interjected gently, sensing the pressure building. "These decisions will shape your future, so make sure to consider all aspects before diving in." "I will, Mom," David assured me with a reassuring smile. "But it's just so hard not to think about what's next. I mean, I've worked my entire life for this moment. I can't help but get excited." "Just promise me you won't lose sight of what truly matters to you," I said, feeling a mix of pride and apprehension. "You're not just a student. You're my son, and I want you to be happy." "Of course, I'll figure it out," he replied, trying to ease my worry. "I just feel like there's so much to explore, and I don't want to miss out on anything." Later, as the celebration wound down and the crowd began to thin, I found a quiet moment with David. The ambient noise of the restaurant faded into the background, and I felt the weight of the conversation shift. "David, how are you really feeling about all this?" I asked, my voice low, wanting to reach the heart of his excitement and anxiety. He sighed, glancing around as if searching for an answer in the bustle. "Honestly, I'm thrilled but terrified. I've never had so many choices before. What if I choose wrong? What if I let you down?" I shook my head, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You could never let me down, sweetheart. This is your life. Trust yourself and know that I'll support you no matter what path you choose. Just remember that it's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's part of growing up." "Thanks, Mom," he said softly, a hint of vulnerability in his eyes. "I just wish I had it all figured out." "You will," I assured him, feeling a surge of hope. "You have a bright future ahead, and whatever decisions you make, you'll handle them with grace and intelligence, just like you always have." As we walked out of the restaurant, David's laughter echoed in the night air, and I couldn't help but feel a flicker of optimism amidst the uncertainties that lay ahead. Perhaps this moment marked not just an ending, but a beautiful beginning, one where David could chase his dreams while I found my own path through the shadows of my marriage. We paused at the curb, and David turned to me, his expression earnest. "Can we talk about something else, like our trip to the beach next week? Just you and me. I want to celebrate, not just for graduation, but for us too." My heart warmed at the thought. "Absolutely. That sounds perfect. Let's make it a celebration of everything we are, and everything that's yet to come." As we got into the car, the promise of a new chapter unfolded before us, and I felt a glimmer of excitement about what the future might hold for both David and me. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the remnants of last night's celebration. I stood at the counter, absent-mindedly pouring myself a cup of coffee while staring at the framed photographs lining the walls. Each picture told a story of laughter and love, but they also carried the weight of memories that had faded over time. David's first day of school. A beaming smile on his face, clutching a bouquet of flowers he'd picked for me. Our family vacation to the beach, where we built sandcastles and chased waves. The day he won the science fair, a trophy larger than him held high above his head. "Mom, what are you looking at?" David's voice broke through my reverie, and I turned to see him entering the kitchen, hair still tousled from sleep. "Oh, just some old photos," I replied, gesturing toward the wall. "Remember this one?" I pointed to the picture of him as a first grader, wearing a too-big backpack and a wide grin. "Oh, that was so embarrassing," he laughed, leaning in closer. "I look like a dork." "You were the cutest dork I ever saw," I teased, but a twinge of sadness crept into my heart. "I just can't believe how fast you've grown up. It feels like yesterday I was helping you with your homework, and now you're ready to take on the world." David smirked, pouring himself a bowl of cereal. "Yeah, well, you're still going to help me with my resume, right?" "Of course." I chuckled, grateful for the lightness in the air. "Just don't expect me to write it in scientific terms. I might accidentally apply you for a job in space engineering instead of genetic engineering." As he laughed, I found myself lost in thought again, my gaze drifting to the other photos that marked significant moments in our lives. Each captured smile was like a thread, weaving together the fabric of our family history. But they also served as a stark reminder of the unraveling that had occurred between me and Alan. "Mom," David said, breaking my train of thought, "do you ever miss those days when we were just a family?" I hesitated, caught off guard by the question. "Sometimes, yes. I think we all do. But life changes, and so do we." David's expression shifted, a hint of concern in his eyes. "Do you think we'll be okay? You and me, I mean." "Of course, sweetheart," I reassured him, moving closer to his side. "No matter what happens, you and I will always be a team. I promise to be here for you, just like I always have." "Yeah, but it's different now," he said softly, avoiding my gaze. "With Dad, it feels like everything's falling apart." I sighed, a heavy weight settling in my chest. "I know it seems that way. Your father and I are trying to figure things out, but I want you to understand that our love for you will never change." David nodded, still looking troubled. "It's just hard seeing you both like this." "I don't want to choose sides." "You don't have to," I said firmly, kneeling to meet his eyes. "You love both of us, and that's what matters most. It's okay to feel confused. Just remember, this is about us supporting each other." "Okay," he whispered, a small smile returning. "Thanks, Mom. I guess I just worry sometimes." "I do too," I admitted. "But let's focus on the positive. You've worked so hard for this graduation, and you have a bright future ahead. Let's celebrate that, shall we?" David brightened, his mood lifting. "You're right. Let's make a plan for our beach trip. I want to go surfing." "Surfing it is. Just promise me you'll wear that life jacket I got you when you were 5, I said, nudging him playfully. "Fine, fine, but only if you join me." He challenged, and I laughed, the tension easing between us. Later that afternoon, I took a moment to wander around our spacious apartment. I paused in front of the living room window, looking out at the view of the city. It had once felt like a sanctuary, filled with warmth and laughter, but now it echoed with a sense of emptiness. As I stood there, I couldn't help but reflect on how quickly things had changed. The love Alan and I once shared had slowly dimmed, replaced by a chasm that felt insurmountable. How had we gone from young lovers filled with dreams to distant strangers barely navigating cohabitation? Just then, I heard the familiar sound of Alan's footsteps approaching. He stepped into the living room, his face drawn and weary, an air of tension surrounding him. "Hey," he said cautiously, glancing at me before turning his attention to David's graduation photos. "Looks like he had a great time yesterday." He did. "He's really excited about what's next," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "Good for him." "He deserves it," Alan muttered, his eyes clouded with something unspoken. "Alan, can we talk about—" "Not now, Olivia. Let's just focus on David for now," he interrupted, frustration edging his voice. "We can discuss everything later." I sighed, feeling the familiar frustration bubble within me. "If not now, then when? We can't keep pretending everything is fine." He shook his head, walking away. "I'm not ready, okay. Just give me some space." I stood there, heart heavy, as he left the room. David's words echoed in my mind, this sense of loss and confusion. Would we ever find our way back to each other? Would the memories of our happy past be enough to bridge the chasm between us? As I returned to the kitchen, I focused on David's laughter echoing from his room, a reminder that amidst the chaos, there was still love and hope. I was determined to nurture that bond, even as I wrestled with the ghosts of our past and the uncertainty of our future. The days following David's graduation were a blur of excitement and anxiety. I found myself caught between celebrating my son's achievements and navigating the turbulent waters of my marriage. Each evening, as I prepared dinner, I could feel the tension simmering beneath the surface, like a storm waiting to break. One particularly humid evening, I was chopping vegetables in the kitchen when David burst through the door, his face lit up with enthusiasm. "Mom, you won't believe the news," he exclaimed, his backpack slipping from his shoulder as he dropped it to the floor. "What is it?" I asked, turning to face him, wiping my hands on a towel. "I just got off the phone with a company in California. They want to interview me for a summer internship." His excitement was palpable, and I couldn't help but share in his joy. "California? That's incredible, David. I'm so proud of you," I said, my heart swelling with pride and a bit of worry. "That's such a big step. Are you ready for it?" "Of course. I mean, this is what I've been working for, right?" "It feels like everything is falling into place," he replied, his eyes bright with ambition. Just as I was about to respond, Alan walked in, his demeanor instantly shifting the mood. "What's all the excitement about?" he asked, arching an eyebrow. "David just got an internship interview in California," I said, attempting to keep the tone light. "California?" Alan's voice dropped slightly, skepticism threading through his words. "That's quite a distance. Are you sure it's the right move?" "Dad, it's an opportunity I can't pass up. It could lead to a full-time job after graduation," David argued, his enthusiasm slightly dimmed by Alan's words. Alan crossed his arms, his expression serious. "You need to think about the logistics, David. Moving across the country isn't just about the job. It's a huge change." I stepped in, sensing the impending clash. "Alan, he's right. This is a big opportunity for him. We should encourage him to explore these possibilities." David looked between us, clearly caught in the middle. "I can handle it," I'll figure it out. I just want your support. Support? It sounds more like running away to me, Alan replied, a hint of bitterness in his tone. Dad, I'm not running away. This is my dream. David snapped back, frustration rising. Enough, I interjected, the tension crackling in the air. David, your father is just worried. And Alan, this is a huge milestone for our son. We should be celebrating, not arguing. David ran a hand through his hair, exasperated. I can't believe you're both treating me like a kid. I'm about to graduate, for crying out loud. I'm ready for this. Alan's expression softened, but his voice remained firm. I just don't want you to make a decision you might regret. It's a big leap, and I want you to be prepared. David sighed deeply, frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. I thought you would support me, Dad. I'm trying to make something of myself. With the air thick with tension, I turned to Alan. This isn't helping anyone. We're supposed to be a team. Can we at least try to be supportive for David's sake? Alan's jaw tightened, but he nodded, albeit reluctantly. Fine, I'll try to understand. Just promise me you'll think it through, David. I will, David replied, a hint of defiance in his tone. I promise I'll weigh my options, but I need you both to believe in me. The atmosphere remained charged as David retreated to his room, leaving Alan and me standing in silence. Do you think he's ready for this? Alan asked, his voice quieter now, as if he was beginning to reconsider. I think he is, I replied softly. He's worked hard for this. It's not about us anymore. It's about him and his future. Alan sighed, rubbing his temples. It's just, he's my son too, and I want what's best for him. But sometimes I feel like he's growing up too fast. I stepped closer, reaching out to touch his arm. We need to trust him, Alan. He's capable, and we can't hold him back out of fear. Remember when we were young and took chances? We didn't have it all figured out either. Alan looked at me, his gaze lingering on my face, as if searching for the connection we once had. I remember, and I just want to protect him from making mistakes. He will make mistakes, but that's part of life. It's how he learns, I said, trying to bridge the distance that had grown between us. We can't control everything, but we can support him. Alan nodded slowly, but I could see the uncertainty still clouding his expression. You're right. I need time to adjust to this. We both do, I replied, feeling a flicker of hope. Let's try to work together. For David. As we stood in the kitchen, I could sense a shift, a possibility for reconciliation. Perhaps this was the turning point we needed, not just for David, but for us as well. Later that evening, I found David in his room, the door slightly ajar. He was sprawled on his bed, staring up at the ceiling. I knocked gently before entering. Mind if I join you? Sure, he mumbled, turning his head to face me. I sat down on the edge of the bed, trying to gauge his mood. I wanted to check on you. How are you feeling about everything? He sighed, running a hand over his face. I don't know, Mom. I feel like I'm caught in the middle of a tug-of-war between you and Dad. I just want to make my own choices. I understand. And I want you to know that you have my support, no matter what, I said, meeting his gaze. But I also want you to feel comfortable talking about your feelings. You don't have to shoulder this alone. David nodded, though uncertainty lingered in his eyes. Thanks, Mom. I just want to make you proud, and I feel like I'm doing everything wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just trying to find your path, and that's completely normal, I reassured him. It's okay to be scared and excited at the same time. That means you're on the brink of something great. Thanks, I guess, he replied, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly. I just wish things were simpler. Me too, I said, feeling a swell of empathy. But you're strong enough to handle whatever comes your way. Just take it one step at a time. As I left his room, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. This was the turning point, not just for David, but for all of us. Perhaps we could rebuild the trust that had been shaken and step forward into a new chapter together. As the days rolled into weeks, the tension at home began to dissolve, replaced by a tentative peace. David's internship interview loomed closer, and his excitement brought a renewed energy into our lives. However, beneath the surface, the unresolved issues between Alan and me remained, like an uninvited guest at our family table. One evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I found myself lost in thought. I stared out the kitchen window at the fading sunset, remembering how Alan and I used to watch the colors blend in the sky, dreaming about our future together. It felt like a lifetime ago. "Mom, you okay?" David's voice cut through my reverie, and I turned to see him leaning against the doorframe, concern etched on his face. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I replied, forcing a smile. "Just thinking." "About what?" he asked, moving closer, his curiosity piqued. "Just life, I guess," I said, feeling the weight of my unspoken thoughts. "How things change over time." David tilted his head, sensing my hesitation. "Like Dad and you?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, something like that. It's hard to see how everything has shifted. It used to be so simple, you know." "Yeah, I get it. It's tough watching you two not get along," he admitted, his voice low. "I just want us to be a family again." I felt a pang in my heart. I want that too, David. But sometimes love isn't as straightforward as we wish it were. "Do you still love him?" he asked, his gaze steady. "I do, but love is complicated. It can be hard to hold on to when life throws challenges at you." I confessed, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "Sometimes it feels like we've lost our way." David nodded, absorbing my words. "I wish you both would talk it out. It feels like there's so much you haven't said to each other." "Believe me, I want that too," I said, raking my fingers through my hair. "But it's easier said than done. There's so much history, and I worry about how it will all play out." Just then, Alan entered the kitchen, breaking the moment. "What's going on in here?" he asked, eyeing the two of us. "Just a deep conversation about life," I said, trying to deflect. David quickly spoke up. "I was just asking Mom if she still loves you. I think we need to figure things out as a family." Alan's expression hardened slightly, a mixture of surprise and defensiveness in his eyes. "That's not really a conversation for the dinner table, is it?" "It's a conversation we need to have," I interjected, my voice steady. "David deserves to understand what's happening between us. We can't keep pretending everything is fine." Alan crossed his arms, frustration creeping back in. "You're putting our son in the middle of this, Olivia. It's not fair." David stepped forward, determination etched on his face. "But I'm not a kid anymore, Dad. I can handle it. I just want to know where we stand as a family. We're all feeling the strain." I felt a flicker of pride for David, his courage shining through the darkness of our circumstances. "He's right, Alan. We can't keep avoiding this. It's affecting all of us." Alan's shoulders slumped as he looked between us, his defenses softening. "I didn't want to drag you into this, David. I thought it would be easier if you didn't have to worry." "Not worrying isn't an option anymore," David replied, frustration creeping into his voice. "I want to know how to support both of you, but I can't if I don't understand." After a moment of silence, Alan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Okay, maybe we need to talk then. But not right now. This is a lot to process." Fine, I said, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. But we need to set a time. We can't just keep postponing this conversation. As David retreated to his room, I watched him go, feeling the weight of our earlier discussion settle heavily in the air. I turned back to Alan, who was now leaning against the counter, staring at the floor. "What now?" he asked quietly, almost defeated. "Now, we talk about everything. The good and the bad. The love and the loss," I replied, feeling a spark of resolve. Alan looked up, his eyes meeting mine, and I saw the flicker of vulnerability hidden beneath his guarded exterior. I don't even know where to start. "Start with the beginning," I suggested, taking a step closer. What made us fall in love? What were our dreams? Because somewhere along the way, I think we forgot. Alan inhaled deeply, his expression softening. "We were young and reckless. Remember our first apartment? How we would sit on the floor eating takeout, dreaming about the future." "Yeah, we thought we could conquer the world," I said, a smile breaking through the tension. "We had so much hope. It felt like nothing could stop us." "Life happened, I guess," he murmured, sadness creeping back into his voice. "Jobs, bills, responsibilities, it all piled up. We stopped communicating, and suddenly we were just existing." I nodded, my heart aching at the truth of his words. And then there was David. He became our world, but in the process, we lost sight of each other. "Yeah," he admitted, his voice heavy. "I felt like I had to be the provider, the protector, but I forgot to be a partner. And I never really accepted David as my own. I was always afraid of failing as a stepdad." "That's not true," I countered, stepping closer to him. "You've been there for him in so many ways. But maybe we both put too much pressure on ourselves." Alan sighed, his shoulders relaxing just a bit. "I guess we just need to be honest with each other. About everything. It's not easy to admit we've failed in some ways." "No, it's not," I said, my heart pounding. "But we can't move forward until we face the truth. I love you, Alan. I always have. But we need to find a way back to each other, to reconnect as partners, not just co-parents." His gaze softened as he took a step closer, reaching for my hand. "I love you too, Olivia. I want to try. I just don't know how." "Let's start small," I suggested, squeezing his hand. "We can work on communication. Set aside time each week to talk about us, about David, about everything." Alan nodded, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "Okay, I can do that. But it's going to take time. I don't want to rush things." "Neither do I agreed, feeling a weight lift from my chest. "Just take it one day at a time. We can rebuild, but we have to be honest with ourselves and each other." As we stood there, hand in hand, I felt a spark of renewed hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something new, a chance to rekindle the love that had faded over the years. We still had a long way to go, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were both willing to fight for it. In the days that followed, I found comfort in our small progress. We talked more, not just about David's future, but about our own. I began to feel a shift, a glimmer of the love we once shared. But I also knew that love and loss were intertwined, and we had to navigate both to find our way back to each other. The sun rose over our city, casting a golden hue through the curtains of our bedroom. The light filtered in softly, but rather than feeling peaceful, it only highlighted the tensions that still hung heavy in the air. Today was the day we had agreed to sit down and face the hard truths of our relationship, and I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me. As I brewed coffee in the kitchen, I tried to calm my racing thoughts. My mind replayed every moment that had led us to this point, every painful argument, every moment of silence that had stretched too long. Just then, Alan entered the kitchen, his hair still tousled from sleep, and his eyes heavy with the remnants of dreams. "Good morning," he said quietly, a tentative smile forming on his lips. "Morning," I replied, forcing a smile back, though my stomach churned with anxiety. "Do you want coffee?" I offered, pouring a cup for myself and preparing to do the same for him. "Sure," he replied, leaning against the counter, looking more like the man I fell in love with, but still weighed down by the looming conversation. As I handed him the steaming cup, our fingers brushed against each other, and for a moment it felt like a spark of the old connection. But the moment was fleeting, and the reality of our situation loomed larger than any warmth shared between us. "Are you ready for today?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Alan sighed, his eyes drifting to the window. "Not really, but I think we both know we can't avoid it anymore." "No, we can't," I agreed, taking a seat at the small kitchen table. It's time we were honest with each other. He nodded, taking a deep breath before sitting down across from me. "So where do we start?" "Let's start with why we're here," I suggested, my heart racing. "We both feel like we've been drifting apart, and we need to figure out why." Alan rubbed his neck, clearly uncomfortable. "I guess I've been caught up in work, trying to provide for us." I thought that was enough. "I know," I replied gently. "But it's more than that. We stopped talking about our feelings about us. I felt alone in this marriage for a long time." "Why didn't you say something sooner?" he asked, confusion crossing his face. "I thought everything was fine, that we were just busy." I tried, I admitted, frustration bubbling to the surface. But every time I brought it up, it felt like I was complaining. "I didn't want to add to your stress, but I was drowning, Alan. I needed you." "I didn't know." "I really didn't," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I thought we were in a rut, and it would pass. I didn't realize how far apart we had grown. I didn't know how to reach you," I confessed. "I kept hoping we could find our way back to each other, but I was scared that it would be too late." Alan looked down, his fingers tapping nervously against the table. "What if it is too late? What if we can't fix this?" "We have to at least try," I said, feeling the weight of his doubt. "I believe we can, but we both have to be willing to put in the effort." He looked up, locking eyes with me. "What do you want, Olivia?" "Do you want to stay together?" "I do," I replied, my voice steady. "I want to fight for us, for our family, but we need to be honest about our feelings. We can't keep pretending everything is okay." Alan took a deep breath, clearly grappling with his emotions. "I don't want to lose you, but I'm scared of failing. I've never been good at expressing my feelings." "We can learn together," I offered, trying to instill a sense of hope. "Maybe we can start by sharing one thing we appreciate about each other. It's a small step, but it could help rebuild our connection." Alan nodded slowly, contemplating my suggestion. "Okay, I'll go first. I appreciate how hard you work to keep everything together, especially with David. You're an incredible mother." "Thank you," I replied, warmth spreading through me. "And I appreciate how dedicated you are to your job. You've always worked hard for our family, even when it felt like we were growing apart." His eyes softened, and I could see a flicker of the man I had fallen in love with. "I guess we've lost sight of what we meant to each other. I want to change that." "I want that too," I said, my heart racing at the thought of rekindling our relationship. "But we have to communicate better, even when it's uncomfortable." Alain nodded, the tension easing just a bit. "You're right. I'll try to be more open. It's just hard for me." "It's hard for me too," I admitted. "But I think we owe it to ourselves to at least give it a shot. We've come this far." As we continued to share our thoughts, the heaviness in the room began to lift. I could feel a shift happening, a small but significant change in our dynamic. It was clear we had a long way to go, but today felt like the first step toward healing. Later that afternoon, we sat together on the couch, David's schoolwork spread out before us. He entered, eyes bright with curiosity. "Hey, how did the talk go?" "Actually, it went better than I expected," I said, glancing at Alan, who nodded in agreement. "Yeah, we're working on some things," Alan added, a hint of pride in his voice. "Good," David said, a smile breaking through his serious demeanor. "I just want us to be okay again." "We'll get there," I promised, squeezing Alan's hand, feeling the warmth of our connection growing. One step at a time. As David returned to his work, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Facing reality was tough, but it was a necessary step toward rebuilding the love we once shared. With each honest conversation, I believed we were forging a new path, one that could lead us back to the family we wanted to be. The day after our conversation felt different. I woke up feeling a mix of determination and anxiety, like the calm before a storm. David's graduation had been a high point in my life, a moment of pride that reminded me of the joy that could exist within our family. But as I stood in the kitchen, pouring a cup of coffee, I felt a weight pressing down on my heart. The reality of our family situation loomed larger than ever. "Mom," David called from the other room, breaking my reverie. "Can you help me with my project?" "Sure, honey," I replied, forcing a smile as I made my way to his room. My son was the one bright light in my life, and I wanted to be fully present for him, especially now that we were in this delicate phase of rebuilding. As I entered his room, I saw the chaotic assortment of books, papers, and art supplies scattered across his desk. David looked up, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm trying to figure out how to present my project on genetic mutations. I want it to be really impressive." "You will," I said, kneeling beside him. "You're so talented, and I know you've worked hard on this." "Thanks, Mom," he said, his smile illuminating his face. "I just want to make sure it's perfect. It's important to me." I noticed the intensity in his eyes, and it struck me how similar we were. The pressure to succeed was something I had experienced, especially during my own academic pursuits. "What if we work together on this? I can help you brainstorm some ideas." David looked thoughtful for a moment. "That would be awesome. I could use a second opinion. I want to make sure I cover all the important points." As we delved into his project, discussing genetic engineering and the implications of mutations, I felt a surge of pride. Watching him articulate his thoughts and ideas made me realize that this was what I needed to focus on, being the supportive mother he deserved. "Mom, do you think I can actually get a job in this field someday?" he asked, his voice laced with uncertainty. "Absolutely," I replied without hesitation. "You're passionate about it, and you have the talent. Just remember, it's okay to take your time. Your education is important, but so is finding your passion." He nodded, looking reassured. "Thanks, I really appreciate that." After wrapping up our session, I returned to the kitchen, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. I was determined to be the best mother I could be, regardless of the changes in my marriage. I needed to create a stable environment for David, a safe haven amidst the chaos of my own life. Later that evening, I found Alan sitting in the living room, engrossed in his laptop. The glow of the screen illuminated his face, revealing the stress etched on his features. I took a deep breath, ready to take the next step in my resolve. "Alan," I began, my voice steady but gentle. "Can we talk?" He looked up, surprised. "Sure, what's on your mind?" "I've been thinking a lot about our family and what we need to do to move forward," I said, sitting across from him. "I want us to be better for David." He nodded, closing his laptop. I want that too. He deserves a stable home. I want to focus on creating a nurturing environment for him. I continued. I think it's important for us to put our differences aside for his sake, at least until he finishes school. I agree, Alan replied, leaning back in his chair, a hint of relief in his voice. We can make this work. We need to support him, no matter what. We need to show him that we're still a team, even if our relationship is changing, I said firmly. I'm committed to doing this for him, Alan. I want to be there for David, and I need you to be there too. I will, he promised, his eyes meeting mine with sincerity. I'll do whatever it takes to support our son. Let's make a plan, I suggested, feeling a surge of determination. We can set aside some time each week to focus on him. We can help him with his studies, attend events together. Just show him that we're both involved. That sounds good, Alan agreed, a small smile breaking through the tension. We could also make an effort to communicate better about everything, not just with David, but with each other too. Exactly, I replied, feeling a sense of unity forming between us. It's going to take time, but I believe we can make it work. As we talked about our plans, I felt the tension between us begin to dissolve, replaced by a shared commitment to our son. It wasn't a perfect solution, and I knew we still had a long way to go in terms of our relationship. But for now, we were on the same page, and that gave me hope. That night, as I tucked David into bed, I reflected on the importance of my role as a mother. I was resolved to navigate the challenges ahead, focusing on building a future for my son, one filled with love and support. As I kissed him goodnight, I whispered, I love you, David. Always remember that. I love you too, Mom, he replied, his eyes already heavy with sleep. Leaving his room, I felt a sense of determination wash over me. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face whatever came our way. For David, I would be a fierce advocate, a protector, and a loving mother. It was time to embrace my role fully and navigate this new chapter with grace and resolve. The dawn of a new day broke through my window, casting a gentle light across our living room. The atmosphere felt charged with possibility as I prepared for the family meeting we had planned. Today, we would discuss our new approach, and I felt both nervous and hopeful. The air was thick with unspoken words, but I was determined to create a safe space for all of us. David was at the kitchen table, his textbooks spread out in front of him. He glanced up as I entered, looking slightly anxious but excited. Hey, Mom, do you think Dad will really show up? Of course he will, I reassured him, pouring myself a cup of coffee. This is important for our family. We're in this together. Just then, Alan walked through the door, his expression earnest yet slightly guarded. Good morning, everyone, he said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Morning, David replied, his enthusiasm wavering under the weight of uncertainty. Let's sit down, I suggested, motioning to the living room. We have a lot to discuss. Once we were settled, I took a deep breath, feeling the tension rise and fall within me. I know things have been difficult lately, but I believe we can make a fresh start. I want us to focus on being a united front for David. Alan nodded, his brow furrowing slightly. I agree. We need to set aside our differences and work together. What do you have in mind? I think we should establish a family night, I proposed. Once a week, we can dedicate time to each other, whether it's a game night, a movie marathon, or even cooking dinner together. Just something that allows us to bond. David perked up, a hint of excitement in his voice. That sounds cool. Can we have pizza on family night? Absolutely, Alan chimed in, a smile breaking through his initial seriousness. And I'll make sure to order from that place you love. Great, and we can even invite some friends sometimes. David suggested, his energy returning. I felt a surge of warmth at the sight of my son's enthusiasm. That's a wonderful idea. It would be nice to share those moments with others, too. Alan looked at me, his expression shifting as he absorbed the idea. I think this could really help us reconnect. I've missed those family moments. They used to mean everything to me. Me too, I replied, feeling the warmth of his words. And I think it's important for David to see us working together. David's face lit up, and he leaned forward eagerly. So when do we start? Let's make it official next Friday, I proposed. We can kick off the weekend with our first family night. Helen smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. I'll make sure to bring home some fun board games. We can have a little competition. Like a family tournament, David grinned, clearly excited by the idea. Exactly. Alan replied, his enthusiasm matching David's. And I'll even let you win, maybe. As laughter filled the room, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. We were navigating this transition together, and the weight of uncertainty seemed to lift, if only for a moment. It felt good to see Alan engage, to see glimpses of the man I once knew and loved. But as the laughter faded, I sensed an underlying current of apprehension. Alan, I think we also need to talk about our communication, I said, steering the conversation toward the more serious side of our journey. He nodded, his expression turning earnest. You're right. We can't just focus on family fun. We need to be open about what's going on with us. What do you mean? David asked, his curiosity piqued. Alan exchanged a glance with me before responding, well, David, your mom and I are trying to find our way back to each other. That means being honest about our feelings, even when it's tough. I know it's been hard, but we're committed to making it work, I added, hoping to ease any worries he might have. We want to show you that families can go through tough times and still come out stronger. David absorbed this, his expression thoughtful. I get it. I just want us to be okay. And we will be, Alan assured him. We're doing this for you, and we'll keep working on it. As the conversation continued, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Perhaps this was the beginning of a new chapter for our family, one filled with love and understanding. We may not have all the answers, but we were willing to fight for one another, and that mattered. That afternoon, as we walked together through the park, the sun casting a warm glow around us, I marveled at how far we had come in such a short time. David ran ahead, laughing as he chased after a squirrel, while Alan and I walked side by side, our hands brushing occasionally. Olivia, Alan said quietly, I really appreciate you suggesting this family night. I think it's exactly what we need. I appreciate you being open to it, I replied, looking at him. I know it won't be easy, but I believe we can do this together. As we watched David play, I felt a flicker of the love we had shared, the laughter that once echoed through our home. It was a start, and for the first time in a long time, I felt excited about the future. With a mix of determination and hope, I realized that new beginnings were possible, even after heartbreak. It was time to embrace them and create a brighter, more unified family. Together, we could forge a new path, one filled with love, support, and a deeper understanding of one another. If you liked my story, please like and subscribe so that you don't miss my new stories. Thanks.